worrying new education study from the United States is sounding the alarm over a sharp decline in reading habits. And not just reading habits, this is about reading abilities among school students. While math scores are beginning to recover after the pandemic years, reading continues to remain a skill that researchers describe as a free fall. Students across 33 United States are still scoring below pre-pandemic reading levels, raising concerns about long-term learning setbacks among children. Experts say reading recession is the United States being driven by a major shift in children's habits and classroom culture. The rapid rise in smartphones and social media has sharply reduced the amount of time students spend reading books or long-form content. Researchers also point to steady decline in recreational reading among children, with many increasingly dependent on short digital content and constant screen engagement. Another factor highlighted in the study is a weakening of strict academic accountability, with fewer consequences for poor classroom performance and lower student participation. Though what is poor performance, I believe, could rather be very relative. Experts say consistent reading habits, classroom engagement, and reduced screen distraction is critical to reversing this trend. I'm being joined at this point by Marta Vionica Kuligorska, who's an early years educator with MDIS in Greater Noida. Thank you very much. Good evening, Miss Martha. Good to see you. Miss Martha, is this about United States alone, or is this beyond? You've taught across countries. How do you look at this?
So this research is obviously coming from United States, but we see repercussion of pandemic, especially in our learners across the whole world, and having family and friends across the continents. You can see that a younger generation of readers is growing a bit slower, and as well they coming to their own reading rigorously and reading for longer periods of time later on their pre-pandemic peers. So we have noticed that even before pandemic, there were signs of that decline, but post-pandemic, especially when we began learning dependent on online and devices, the physical reading took a bit of a toll.
Right. Ms. Martha, how does this play out within schools? Is this about concentration and focus alone? Is this about coping abilities? Is this about reading? Is this also about interaction? Is this about also what they talk, how they express? How does this reading recession, play out real time in children?
Yes, so I look at as a 20 plus years practitioner, I look at the reading from two aspects. Like it's a technical skill, and as well it's an emotional social component to reading. So pandemic shut down the social component of reading, and as well the whole our life sort of transformed into a virtual reality in a big part. So like bookstores and having intimate relationship in buying books, touching libraries, which is a huge part of reading. And that emotional component focuses on loving reading. Reading as leisure and pleasure, and as well a way to get somewhere that you desire without necessarily this means to be there. So reading book and filming yourself to post yourself on Instagram is not so hot. However, that is changing. I'm a big fan of the Google Reads and all these platforms where you encourage reading, and that technical component stays the same. They are the same, basically speaking as early years practitioner, there's the same technical needs to begin the journey of reading, and that this technical knowledge has to be acquired. But our younger learners come to these technical skills in a slower pace post-pandemic because there are more distractions, there are more things that are instant rewards like games, and even the structure of entertainment is very fast-paced, and reading is not fast-paced and doesn't have to be fast-paced.
You know, Ms. Martha, why should somebody read? You know, of course, you have your basic reading and all of that, and part of growing and all of that, but there was a time when reading would open the window to the world, a world that you did not know, a world that you never knew existed. But that's not really the case for children anymore, for students anymore. It's a click of a button and you can go beyond anything that's can be imagined. You can even create your own world now, and I'm talking about AI and so much more that younger kids are so much more well versed with now. So if parents are looking and watching this and saying, okay, reading has declined, the reading scores have declined, so what? How would you respond to that?
Oh, I would say yes, the world has changed, and the new generation that's coming up now, they need other skills. But without reading, there is an element of brain development that is stifled, and this without reading, which is a hard skill to get. And you don't have to be an amazing reader or a high scoring reader. It still is hard. It's to get to be fluent in reading, and reading not only decoding but comprehension, understanding what I read, inferring from text. It's a skill, and if
which develops different parts of the brain.
Absolutely. And if we stop actually caring about that aspect, what reading does for our young people, then we're going to have a whole generation and maybe multiple generations of young people coming into workforce that don't have that critical skills. And I don't know how long this AI revolution is going to last, but we know from history, but those wonderful, very, very exciting things last, and then they stop. And then we go back to our historical, good, old ways of doing things and finding out information. And I always tell my story to my class children about not having internet, not having computer, and have to go to look for information and encyclopedia. And they really are terrified and laughing. How can I survive? Still alive. So.
Right. I mean, what good is AI? What good is anything if you cannot read, if you cannot comprehend, if you cannot communicate? And reading possibly is the link to all of these things and even much more. Very quickly, my last question. What must parents and schools do? If you can give 3 action-oriented suggestions for parents, schools to really work on the reading skills of children.
So first of all, model. Both family and schools model love for reading and appreciation for books, and balance between, that's the second part, the balance between digital content and the physical books. I am very much in favor of e-readers or even audiobooks, but in concert, in balance with the traditional approach and having access to traditional books. And then as well, developmentally speaking, looking at our learners and their needs and what do they need to read better. So yes, building excitement about reading, looking at reading as an adventure and as well as a that thing that opens up you to intellectually to the next level. Yeah, it's not only the score on mark sheet, it's something that I can use on and on and on in different ways. So applicable reading skills across the board.
Right. Ms. Martha, thank you so much for your time. A lot to learn, a lot to develop. And of course, this is a conversation that I think many of us must be having much more, not only in our houses, but also in public spaces and of course, whichever platforms we really can access. Thank you, Ms. Martha, for taking the time out. Thank you so much.